I knew the company was heading for meltdown the moment I saw the new vice president of operations trying to open a PDF with Internet Explorer. But let's back up. In the defense contracting world, there are two types of people: those who understand ITAR, international traffic in arms regulations, and those who are about to go to federal prison. I'm the person standing between the executives and an orange jumpsuit. I'm not a team player. I'm not a culture fit, and I sure as hell don't participate in Fun Fridays. I am a firewall made of flesh, caffeine, and terrifying knowledge of US export laws. My name is Tanya. I'm 48, I wear blazers that cost more than your car, and I possess the kind of resting bitch face that makes grown engineers check their math 3 times before approaching my desk. By the way, if you're into watching corporate arrogance get dismantled brick by brick, hit subscribe and maybe upvote. It fuels my petness and tells the algorithm that justice is still a viable product. For 10 years, I was the export control officer for Aerotech Dynamics, fake name, obviously, because I don't need the DOJ at my door again. We made guidance chips for drones, not the kind you buy at Best Buy to film your nephew's soccer game, the kind that end up in conflict zones. My job was simple: ensure that every single microchip, screw, and technical drawing we sent overseas had a license from the State Department. If I did my job, nobody noticed me. If I failed, the FBI raided the building. I liked those stakes. They kept the idiots at bay. Then came Kyle. Kyle was the new VP. He was 32, had a degree in strategic leadership from a university that probably operates out of a strip mall, and possessed teeth so white they looked like they were trying to surrender. He was hired by the board to disrupt the workflow and trim the fat. Naturally, he looked at my department, compliance, and saw nothing but a money pit. Our first meeting was in his office, which he had redecorated with a standing desk and a motivational poster that said grind in a font that screamed insecurity. Tanya, hey, take a seat, he said, pointing to a beanbag chair. I remained standing. So I've been looking at the org chart, and I'm seeing a lot of bottlenecks in logistics. Specifically, your approval queue. It's not a bottleneck, Kyle, I said, my voice flat enough to use as a level. It's a federal requirement. We can't ship restricted hardware to a country on the embargo list just because FedEx offers a discount. He laughed, a hollow, dry sound like shaking a box of expired croutons. Right, regulations, I get it. We need to be agile. We need to move at the speed of business, not the speed of government. I feel like you're playing goalie when we need you to be a striker. I'm not playing soccer, Kyle. I'm playing keep the CEO from being indicted for arms trafficking. If I stop being a goalie, you don't score a goal. You score a $20 million fine and a ban from all government contracts. He waved his hand dismissively, as if he could shoo away the code of federal regulations like a bad smell. You're too in the weeds, Tanya. You're focused on the cans instead of the cans. I need visionaries here. Also, I noticed you spend a lot of time on that charity board of yours. The one for? What is it? Literacy? Veterans Rehabilitation, I corrected. I volunteer 10 hours a month, on weekends, which is my time. Right. Well, perception is reality, Tanya. When people see you focusing on outside projects, they wonder if your head is really in the game here at Aerotech. Just a thought. I walked out of his office with a vibration in my teeth that usually indicates an oncoming migraine or a stroke. He was setting the stage. I knew the signs. I've survived 3 CEOs and a DOJ audit. I know when I'm being hunted. The problem with Kyle wasn't that he was stupid. Stupid I can handle. I can educate stupid. The problem was that he was arrogant and ambitious, a cocktail that tastes like gasoline and burns down buildings. He didn't understand that my bottleneck was the only thing giving this company value. We didn't sell chips, we sold compliant chips. Our clients bought from us because they knew our paperwork was bulletproof. If you strip away the compliance, we're just another factory selling sand and plastic. I went back to my office, corner room with blackout curtains and a shredder that could handle credit cards, and started doing what I do best: documentation. I didn't just file export licenses. I archived emails. I saved Slack messages. I transcribed voicemail. If Kyle was going to come for me, I was going to make sure that when he eventually pulled the trigger, the recoil would take his arm off. The air in the office felt different that week. The engineers, usually my allies because I kept them out of trouble, wouldn't make eye contact. The shipping manager, a good guy named Dave who looked like a walrus and smelled like Old Spice, stopped by my desk and whispered, "He's asking for your passwords, Tan." He asked IT for a backdoor to the licensing portal. "Let him ask," I said, sipping my lukewarm green tea. The State Department issues those credentials to individuals, not companies. He can't just log in as me. That's identity fraud on a federal level. He doesn't care, Dave said, looking over his shoulder. He's bringing in some consultant friend, a guy named Brad or Chad or Thad. One of those names. Says he can automate your job with AI. I almost laughed. AI for ITAR compliance? That's like trying to use ChatGPT to defuse a nuclear bomb. Sure, it might guess the right wire, but are you willing to bet the city on it? I spent the rest of the afternoon auditing the current pending shipments. We had a massive order, $12 million worth of drone stabilizers, sitting on the dock, waiting for a DSP-5 license amendment. It was going to a friendly nation, but the end-user certificate had a typo. A single digit off. If we shipped it, it was a violation. I had flagged it red. I looked at the screen, the red flag pulsing like a heartbeat. Don't do it, Kyle. I whispered to the empty room. Don't be a hero. But I knew he would be. Heroes like Kyle always think the rules are just suggestions for lesser men. He didn't know that I was already packing my personal files. I wasn't planning to quit, but I was definitely planning to survive. The storm was coming, and unlike Kyle, I had an umbrella made of steel. The following Tuesday, the calendar invite appeared in my inbox like a digital death threat. Strategic realignment and efficiency sync. No agenda attached. Just Kyle, me, and the HR director, a woman named Janice who possessed the spine of a gummy worm and communicated exclusively in sad nods. I walked into the conference room armed with a binder. I'm old school. I like paper. You can delete an email. You can't remotely wipe a 3-inch binder filled with time-stamped incompetence. Kyle was already there, practicing his putting on a portable green he'd installed in the corner. Tanya, good of you to join us, Kyle said, missing a 3-foot putt. Grab a water. Hydrate or dehydrate, right? I sat down, ignoring the water. What's the realignment, Kyle? He leaned against the table, crossing his ankles. He was wearing loafers with no socks. I hate that look. It screams. I have never done manual labor, but I will fire people who do. So here's the 30,000-foot view, Kyle began, using his hands to draw a big, imaginary box in the air. We're pivoting. The market is demanding speed. And frankly, the compliance department, meaning you, is operating on a 1990s chassis. We're moving to a compliance-as-a-service model. I blinked. You're outsourcing ITAR to who? A call center? No, to a boutique firm. Buddy of mine runs it. Dynamic Solutions. They use algorithms to scan shipping manifests. It's slick, Tanya, very slick, and it costs 40% less than your salary plus benefits. I opened my binder. The sound of the metal ring snapping open echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Kyle, does Dynamic Solutions have a specialized Empower official registered with the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls? He paused. His smile faltered for a microsecond. They have. Systems? They're very tech-forward. Systems don't go to jail, Kyle. People do. Let me explain something to you. I pulled out a printed spreadsheet. Last quarter, I stopped 3 shipments. One was going to a shell company in Dubai that fronts for Iranian interests. The algorithm missed it because the name was spelled phonetically. I caught it because I recognized the street address from a briefing I read in 2014. If that shipment had gone out, the fine would have been $500,000 per violation. That's $1.5 million. Your savings of 40% on my salary would have been wiped out in 10 seconds. Janice, the HR lady, looked down at her notepad, aggressively doodling spirals. She knew I was right. She also knew Kyle was the VP and I was just the buzzkill. You're being dramatic, Kyle scoffed, finally sitting down. That's the problem, Tanya. You operate from a place of fear. Operate from a place of yes. Besides, this decision has already been made. We're bringing in the consultants next week to shadow you. We want a knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer, I repeated. You want me to teach a piece of software how to have 10 years of intuition? I want you to be a team player, Kyle said, his voice dropping an octave, losing the friendly veneer. And honestly, Tanya, this obsession with the rules, it's a red flag. It makes people wonder what you're hiding. If you're so worried about the government looking at us, maybe it's because you've been doing something wrong and you're afraid a fresh set of eyes will catch it. There it was, the gaslighting. He was twisting my competence into suspicion. It was a classic corporate move. Accuse the whistleblower of creating the noise. I have nothing to hide, Kyle. My logs are immaculate, but I'm not going to train my replacement to break the law. It's not a request, Tanya, he said, checking his Apple Watch. You need full cooperation, or we need to have a different conversation about your future here. I stood up. I didn't slam the binder, I closed it gently. I think the conversation is already over, Kyle. You're not looking for compliance. You're looking for an accomplice, and I don't look good in stripes. I walked back to my desk, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs. Thump, 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 not fear, adrenaline. I opened my email client and saw a message from Dave in shipping. Subject, heads up, body, they just canceled the hold on the drone stabilizers. Kyle signed the override himself. He said the typo was negligible. My blood ran cold. He had overridden a federal block. He had literally signed his name to a violation before he had even fired me. He thought he was being a decisive leader. He had just handed me the nuclear launch codes. I didn't run to stop the shipment. That's what the old Tanya would have done. The Tanya who cared about saving the company. The new Tanya, the one who had just been told she was a red flag, she just took a screenshot of the override log, saved it to an encrypted USB drive, and whispered, "Bon voyage, you idiots." The trap was set. They were just waiting for me to step into it. But they forgot that I was the one who built the floor. 2 days later, on a Thursday morning that smelled of rain and burnt coffee, I was summoned back to the conference room. The mood had shifted from aggressive corporate optimism to legal Grim Reaper. Janice was there again, but this time she wouldn't look up from her hands. Kyle wasn't pudding. He was sitting behind the table with a manila folder. A security guard named Steve, who I had literally baked cookies for last Christmas, was standing by the door, looking at his shoes. Tanya, please sit, Kyle said. He didn't offer water this time. I'll stand, I said. Suit yourself. We've made a decision regarding your employment with Aerotech. Effective immediately, we are terminating your contract. I didn't blink. Cause, performance issues related to focus, Kyle said, tapping the folder. We've noticed a significant amount of company time and resources being diverted to your personal projects, the veterans' charity. You feel that your divided attention poses a risk to the agile direction the company is taking. It was a lie so lazy it was almost insulting. They couldn't fire me for doing my job, so they fired me for being a good person on my lunch breaks. I see, I said. And my severance? 2 weeks. Standard, Janice mumbled, sliding a paper across the table. And we'll need you to sign this NDA. I picked up the NDA, I scanned it. It was boilerplate trash. I'll have my lawyer review this, I said, dropping it back on the table. Kyle bristled. It's a standard separation agreement, Tanya. If you don't sign, we can't release the severance. Keep the 2 weeks, I said. I'm not signing away my right to speak about federal violations just for the price of a used Honda Civic. Kyle's face turned a shade of red that clashed with his blue shirt. Steve will escort you to your desk to collect your personal effects. You have 10 minutes. Your network access has already been revoked. I looked at Kyle, really looked at him. I wanted to remember his face. I wanted to remember the smugness, the unearned confidence, the way he thought he had just solved a problem when he had actually just pulled the pin on a grenade. One question, Kyle, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Who is the registered ITAR compliance officer as of 5 minutes ago? We have it covered, he sneered. Bob from marketing has a certificate. He's taking the interim lead until the consultants start. Bob from marketing, Bob, whose greatest professional achievement was organizing the company chili cook-off. Good luck, Kyle, I said, you're going to need it. The walk to my desk was a parade of shame. People stared. I kept my head high. I put my framed photo of my dog, my lucky stapler, and my bottle of Excedrin into a cardboard box. Steve, the guard, looked like he wanted to cry. I'm sorry, Tanya, he whispered. I just do what they tell me. It's okay, Steve, I said. Keep your head down. It's going to get ugly here. They walked me out the front door. The heavy glass doors slid shut behind me with a final thud. I stood in the parking lot, the rain starting to drizzle on my blazer. I felt light, weightless. I drove home in silence. No radio, just the sound of the tires on wet pavement. When I got to my house, a quiet colonial in the Virginia suburbs, I didn't cry, I didn't drink wine. I walked into my home office, booted up my personal laptop, and opened my private email. I had one email to send. Per the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, a company must notify the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, DDTC, within a specific time frame when their empowered official leaves the organization. It's a mandatory disclosure. Usually the company sends this. But knowing Kyle, didn't even know the form existed. He probably thought he could just swap me out like a toner cartridge. I drafted the email to my contact at the State Department, a woman named Susan, who I had known for years. We bonded over a mutual hatred of sloppy paperwork at a conference in D.C. Subject: Notice of Personnel Change Registration Code, M19284. Dear Susan, please be advised that effective immediately, I am no longer the empowered official for Aerotech Dynamics. I have been terminated. To my knowledge, no qualified replacement has been appointed. Please update your records to reflect that I am no longer liable for any exports originating from this entity. Regards, Tanya. I hit send. That email was the first domino. By removing my name, I wasn't just quitting. I was stripping the company of its license to operate. Without an empowered official, every export they made was technically unauthorized. I sat back in my chair and listened to the rain. The silence in the house was beautiful. It sounded like the countdown on a bomb that Kyle couldn't hear ticking. The week following my termination was the most peaceful week of my life. I finally had time to organize my spice rack. I alphabetized my cumin and coriander, while Aerotech was likely burning to the ground. My phone, however, was blowing up. Not from Aerotech, they had ghosted me completely, but from headhunters. In my industry, a good export control officer is rarer than a unicorn. We are the dark wizards of the defense world. When word got out that I was on the market, my LinkedIn inbox turned into a bidding war. Tanya, heard you left Aerotech. Lockheed has an opening in Bethesda. Double your current base. Tanya, Raytheon needs a cleanup crew for a subsidiary. Name your price. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. I was enjoying the silence. I was also enjoying the texts from the resistance, my network of loyalists still trapped inside Kyle's kingdom. Dave from shipping texted me on Tuesday, it's a circus here. Bob from marketing is trying to approve shipments. He asked me what a munitions list is. He thought it was a shopping list for the company picnic. I replied with a single popcorn emoji. On Wednesday, I got a text from Sarah in accounting. Kyle is walking around telling everyone he trimmed the fat. He bought a new espresso machine for the break room with the budget he saved from your salary. It's broken already. I sipped my tea. Enjoy the coffee, Kyle, but the real intel came on Thursday. A junior engineer named Mike, a kid I had mentored on encryption standards, sent me a message via Signal. Smart kid. They're prepping the shipment, the big one to the Middle East. When you blocked, Kyle is screaming at logistics to get it on the truck by Friday so he can book the revenue for the quarter. Bob signed the paperwork. He used a stamp, a stamp. Bob was approving restricted military technology with a rubber stamp. I felt a pang of anxiety, not for me, but for the sheer recklessness of it. These were guidance chips. In the wrong hands, they could target US troops. This wasn't just corporate politics anymore. This was national security. I briefly considered calling the FBI tip line right then, but I didn't need to. The system has immune responses for this kind of stupidity. It just takes time for the antibodies to arrive. I spent Friday working on my garden. I was pruning my hydrangeas when my phone rang. It wasn't a text. It was a call from a 202 area code. Washington, D.C. It was Susan from the State Department. Tanya, she said. Her voice was warm but clipped. I got your email. I'm updating the registry. Just to clarify, did you sign off on a DSB 83 for a shipment of Class Roman 4 electronics before you left? No, Susan, I said, snapping a dead branch off the bush. My access was revoked on Thursday. I haven't signed anything in a week. Why? Because Susan sighed, the sound of papers rustling in the background. Aerotech just filed an automated export clearance through the AES portal. It lists you as the certifying official. I stopped pruning. My blood turned to ice, then to fire. They did what? They used your credentials, Tanya, or at least your registration code. Susan, I said, my voice trembling with rage. That is fraud. I did not authorize that. I am formally stating that my identity has been used without my consent. I thought so, Susan said. Okay. I'm flagging the shipment. And Tanya, yes, you might want to turn off your phone this weekend. It's going to get loud. She hung up. Kyle hadn't just fired me. He had impersonated me. He was so desperate to get that shipment out that he had committed a felony to do it. He probably thought the system was just a computer that needed a code. He didn't realize the code was a person. I went back inside and poured myself a very large glass of wine. I looked at the rain falling outside. The quiet week was over. The storm had just made landfall. Friday afternoon at 4:00 p.m., the golden hour for shipping. If you get it on the truck by 4, it's at the airport by 6 and out of the country by midnight. Kyle must have been popping champagne. At 4:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Dave from shipping. Feds are here, 3 words, beautiful in their simplicity. I wasn't there, but I can paint the picture because I know exactly how it goes down. I've seen it once before, early in my career at a different firm. It's not like the movies. SWAT teams don't rappel through the windows. It's far more embarrassing. It starts with Customs and Border Protection, CBP, putting a hold on the cargo at the airport. The AES system, automated export system, flashes a fatal error code. Then, a couple of very polite officers in windbreakers show up at the loading dock. They don't yell, they just ask for the paperwork. Dave told me later that Kyle actually went down to the dock to handle it. Gentlemen, Kyle apparently said, flashing his best boardroom smile, there seems to be a misunderstanding. This is a priority shipment for a key ally. The lead officer, a guy who probably deals with drug runners and arms dealers all day, didn't even blink. Sir, are you the empowered official? I'm the VP of Operations, Kyle announced. I run this facility. That's not what I asked. We have a flag on the shipment stating the certifying official is no longer employed here. Yet the electronic filing was submitted under her credentials this morning. That's a violation of the Arms Export Control Act. Kyle, ever the improviser, tried to pivot. Well, Tanya is? Consulting. She's in transition. It's a paperwork lag, sir. Fraud is not a paperwork lag, the officer said. We're seizing the cargo. And we're issuing a temporary suspension order for all exports from this facility pending an audit. Imagine $12 million worth of high-tech hardware being wrapped in seized tape. Imagine the truck drivers, who get paid by the mile, turning off their engines and lighting cigarettes. Imagine Bob from marketing, standing there in his khakis, realizing that his interim role might involve an interrogation room. At 5:30 p.m., I received an automated email from the company's server, likely a blast to all managers that they forgot to remove me from. Subject, urgent logistics delay body. Due to a technical glitch with customs, the Q3 shipment is on hold. We are troubleshooting with the vendor. All hands on deck meeting Monday at 8 a.m. Troubleshooting with the vendor. He was still lying. Couldn't admit he had broken the law. He was calling the US government a vendor with a glitch. I sat on my porch watching the sun go down. The air smelled sweet. The anxiety that had lived in my chest for the last 3 months under Kyle's regime was gone. It was replaced by a grim certainty. Kyle thought he was playing 4D chess. He didn't realize he was playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded Glock. The shipment was dead. The revenue was gone. But the real pain hadn't even started. The audit wasn't just a meeting, it was an autopsy. And I was the only one who knew where the bodies were buried because I was the one who had spent 10 years trying to keep them from dying in the first place. My phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again and again. Finally, I picked it up. Hello, Tanya, it was Kyle. He sounded breathless. Hey, so funny thing. Have a bit of a snag with the paperwork. The system is acting up. I need your password for the DDTC portal. Just to, clear the cache. I smiled, a shark's smile. Kyle, I said softly, I don't work there anymore. I know, Kyle stammered, his voice pitching up into a whine, but technically you're still in the system. So if you could just give me the login, or maybe hop on a quick Zoom to walk Bob through the override, we can fix this in 5 minutes. We'll pay you for your time, contract rate. Kyle, I said, holding the phone away from my ear as if it were contaminated. You don't understand, there is no override. The State Department has flagged the shipment because I told them I don't work there. If I give you my password now, after I've already declared I'm gone, I would be conspiring to commit export fraud. I'm not going to federal prison so you can hit your quarterly bonus, you told them. Kyle's voice dropped. You called the feds on us? I filed a mandatory regulatory disclosure, Kyle, which you would know if you had read the binder I left on your desk. The one you used as a coaster for your protein shake. You sabotaged us, he shouted. The mask was off. The strategic leader was gone, the scared frat boy was back. You set this up, you knew this would happen. I didn't sabotage anything. I removed the safety rails. You're the one who drove the car off the cliff. I just stepped out of the vehicle before impact. Listen to me, Tanya, he hissed. If we don't ship this, the company misses guidance. Stock drops, people lose jobs. Do you want that on your conscience? Steve the guard, Dave in shipping, their jobs are on you. Ah, the guilt trip, the last refuge of a narcissist. Don't you dare put that on me, I snapped. My voice finally rose, cutting through the evening air. I spent 10 years protecting those jobs. I protected them from incompetence. I protected them from regulations that would crush this place. You fired the protector. You fired the insurance policy because you thought it was too expensive. Whatever happens to Steve and Dave is on you, Kyle. You wanted to be the visionary? Congratulations. You're now witnessing the vision of a federal investigation. I hung up. Then I blocked his number. I sat there, my hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying what I had wanted to say for 3 months. It felt like purging poison. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged, a text from an unknown number. Tanya, this is Janice from HR. Please call us. We can discuss a reinstatement package. Significant raise, please. I didn't reply. Reinstatement? To what? A crime scene. Don't go back into the burning building just because the arsonist realizes he forgot his wallet. I turned my phone off completely. I went into the kitchen and made dinner. I grilled a steak. I opened a bottle of expensive Cabernet. I ate alone in the quiet of my kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I knew what Monday would bring. The audit team wouldn't just be looking at the shipment. Once the State Department opens the hood, they look at everything. Every email, every classification, every visitor log. They would find the interim measures. They would find Bob. They would find the lack of training. I took a sip of wine. Here's to agility, I toasted to the empty room. I slept better that night than I had in years. Monday morning at Aerotech usually started with a stand-up scrums meeting where people stood around awkwardly while Kyle threw buzzwords at them. This Monday there was no scrum, there were just suits. I wasn't there. Dave gave me the play-by-play later over beers. At 8:05 a.m., a team from the DDTC, Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, and a couple of special agents from Homeland Security entered the lobby. They didn't sign in on the iPad, they flashed badges that stopped traffic. The lead auditor was a man named Mr. Henderson. According to Dave, Henderson looked like he was carved out of granite and disappointment. He wore a gray suit, carried a black binder, had eyes that had seen every excuse known to man. We are here to conduct a directed audit regarding unauthorized exports and credential fraud, Henderson announced to the terrified receptionist. Please summon the senior leadership. Kyle came running down the stairs, trying to look in charge but sweating through his shirt. Gentlemen, I'm Kyle, VP of Ops. I'm sure we can clear this up. We have a coffee bar upstairs if you'd like to. We don't want coffee, Henderson said, his voice filling the lobby without being loud. We want your server logs, we want your visitor records, and we want to speak to your empowered official. Right, Kyle said, his smile twitching. Well, we are currently in a transition phase. Transition is not a compliance status, Henderson said. He motioned to his team. Secure the records room. Nobody touches a computer until we say so. It was a raid, a polite, paper-based raid. The agents moved through the office like water. It went to my old desk. They went to the server room. They went to shipping. Dave said Bob from marketing was found hiding in the break room trying to delete emails from his phone. An agent gently took the phone out of his hand. That's evidence, sir. The beauty of a DDTC audit is that they don't care about your profit margins. They don't care about your agile workflow. They care about the chain of custody. And the chain was broken. They found the override logs. They found the typo correction that wasn't a typo. They found the email from Kyle instructing Bob to just use Tanya's login. She won't mind. That email alone was worth 5 years in prison. Back at my house, I was gardening again. I was planting petunias. My neighbor, Mrs. Gable, waved at me. You're home early, Tanya, taking a holiday? Permanent vacation, Mrs. Gable, I called back. Just doing some weeding. I was weeding my garden. The feds were weeding Aerotech. Around noon, my LinkedIn chimed. It wasn't a recruiter. It was the CEO of Aerotech, the big boss, the guy who hired Kyle. He was usually in Shielding in New York, far away from the operations. Message, Tanya, we need to talk. Urgent. I looked at the message. I imagined the panic in the boardroom. I imagined them realizing that the bottleneck they fired was the only thing holding up the roof. I didn't reply. I went back to my petunias. They needed water. Aerotech needed a miracle, and I was fresh out of those. The audit lasted 3 days. 3 days of silence from the factory floor. 3 days of lawyers swarming the parking lot like vultures. On Wednesday afternoon, the verdict was delivered. They gathered in the main conference room, the same room where Kyle had fired me, the same room where he had practiced his pudding. The pudding green was gone now, shoved into a closet. Henderson sat at the head of the table. The CEO flew in. Kyle was there, looking like a ghost. Bob was there, looking like he was about to vomit. Henderson opened his black binder. The sound was deafening in the silence. We have reviewed your records, Henderson began. We found 114 violations of the ITAR in the last 6 days. 114. Every email Bob sent to a foreign vendor with a spec sheet attached, violation. Every time they accessed the server from an unsecured laptop, violation. The shipment, major violation. The fines for these violations, Henderson continued, start at roughly $500,000 per instance. However, the most concerning issue is the systemic lack of oversight. He looked directly at Kyle. You knowingly used the credentials of a terminated employee to bypass federal controls. That is criminal intent. Kyle tried to speak. I was trying to be agile. You were being reckless, Henderson said. He closed the binder. Snap. Effective immediately, Aerotech Dynamics is suspended from the Defense Trade Control Register. You are debarred. You cannot export a single screw until this investigation is concluded and a consent agreement is signed, which, given the severity, will likely take years. Debarment. The death penalty. It meant they couldn't sell to the military. They couldn't sell to foreign allies. It could only sell to nobody. The company was effectively dead. The CEO turned to Kyle. I wasn't there, but Dave said the look on the CEO's face was one of pure, unadulterated hatred. Pack your things, the CEO whispered to Kyle, and call your lawyer. We aren't paying for him. At that exact moment, across town, I was sitting in a coffee shop with a woman named Alina. She was the vice president of compliance for a massive aerospace conglomerate, a competitor. Heard what happened, Alina said, stirring her latte. The industry is small, Tanya. Word travels fast. You walked out and the place collapsed in a week. That's impressive. It wasn't a strategy, I said. It was gravity. We want you, Alina said. We don't need agile. We need safe. We need someone who can stare down a VP and tell him no. We heard you're good at that. She slid a paper across the table. The salary figure was offensive, offensively high. It was enough to buy a beach house. It was enough to buy Kyle's dignity if he had any left. I have one condition, I said. Name it. I answer only to the board. No VPs, no strategic leaders. If I say a shipment stops, it stops. And I get a budget for my veterans charity. Alina smiled. Done. I signed the paper. Aerotech didn't survive the year. The fines were in the millions, but the debarment was the nail in the coffin. Clients fled. Contracts were voided. The stock price went from $45 to $2. Kyle was fired, obviously, but it didn't end there. The DOJ picked up the case. Last I heard, he was pleading guilty to conspiracy to violate the Arms Export Control Act to avoid a longer sentence. He's looking at 18 months in a minimum security facility. I hope he likes the orange jumpsuit. It's very high visibility, very agile. Bob from marketing got off with probation. He rolled on Kyle immediately. He's back to organizing chili cook-offs for a car dealership now. The sad part, the part that actually hurts, is the collateral damage. Dave in shipping lost his job. Steve the guard was let go. But here's the thing about competence, it recognizes its own. I hired Dave at my new firm 3 weeks later. He runs our logistics now. He makes more money and nobody asks him to break the law. Steve is working security at our front gate. I didn't save everyone, but I saved the ones who mattered. 6 months later, I received a LinkedIn notification. Kyle has viewed your profile. I clicked on his profile. It was stripped bare. Former VP open to work, strategic visionary seeking new opportunities. I laughed. I took a sip of my coffee, brewed in my new office, which overlooks the Potomac. I didn't block him this time. I wanted him to see. I updated my status. Tanya V., Senior Director of Global Trade Compliance, specializing in cleanups and catastrophe prevention. I scrolled down to my skills section and added one more, just for him, crisis management. The truth is, I didn't destroy Aerotech. I just took my hands off the wheel. They thought compliance was a burden. They thought I was a weight slowing them down. They didn't realize I was the ballast keeping the ship upright. When you throw the ballast overboard to make the ship lighter, you don't go faster, you just capsize. I closed my laptop. It was 5:00 p.m. on a Friday. My team had cleared every shipment, the logs were perfect. The licenses were valid. I walked out of the building past Steve at the desk. Good night, Tanya, he beamed. Good night, Steve. I drove home, the radio playing loud. I felt light. I felt heavy. I felt vindicated. And somewhere in a legal office, Kyle was learning the most expensive lesson of his life. You can mess with the culture, You can mess with the budget, but you never, ever mess with the woman who knows where the paperwork is filed. Because the paperwork remembers, and the paperwork never forgives. Real power doesn't announce itself, it just quietly is. Tanya proved that when her calculated moves exposed corporate arrogance for what it was. Expertise, once dismissed, often carries the highest price. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.